So you guys like that fig propagation video I just posted? Well, it was a lot of fun to make, but I got a lot of questions on it in regard to watering, so I thought before we go any further here, I'm going to just tell you exactly how I watered it and how much I watered it, or watered the group of them while they were rooting. So first of all, here's that little fig, and if you didn't see the video, I'll put a link in the description, but it sure is growing beautifully. Just over a few days, you can see all this new growth just shooting out here. I love these little things. They're just really beautiful little plants. So did I water them? Yes, I did water them. It was in the beginning, it was several months ago that I started these cuttings. It was still really cool. And so I was getting away with watering them maybe once every 2 weeks in the very beginning. I think it's been like maybe even 3 months since I started this, but every 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, and then it quickly tapered up to once a week, and then it was every other day eventually over the last month. And every time I would come out here and water all my plants out here, I would just go and water these cuttings, just because, remember, this is not potting soil that you get at a store. It doesn't hold a lot of moisture. It drains really well, and you can see I watered these last night, and the top layer of the bark is already starting to dry a little bit. You get down a centimeter and it's moist, but the top layer is starting to dry a little bit. So this bark does hold moisture, but it drains really well, and so I had to water on a frequent basis through the summertime. You really got to gauge it based on how much moisture is in the soil. So if you guys are using potting soil or more peat in your potting rooting medium, then you definitely don't need to be watering every day. I would try to water as little as possible. For these guys, I kind of had to because of the medium, but just for your information, one surefire way to do this where you're not going to have to worry about overwatering at all, you could water every single day if you want to, and you wouldn't have to worry about too much moisture. Just use sand. Use sand in the pot as your rooting medium. It will drain right through every time, but it'll keep the sand moist, and it won't hold on to too much moisture. Alright, so let's get to the real meat and potatoes of this video, and that is, how do we overwinter all these rooting cuttings that we've been doing through the summer? So that one question I've been getting more than any other question over the last probably 3 weeks to a month, and I think it's time to just answer that. So having said that, I've already made lots of videos about this, but I know there's a lot of new people to the channel who are constantly coming in, and they may not have seen those videos. I started probably about 3 years ago making videos about overwintering rooted cuttings. Some of them I started in the fall, did the overwintering process, and then showed you the results in the spring. Some of them I even went and abused those cuttings and put them straight out in the snow through the winter and showed you that they will bounce back in the spring. And then I also went through a series of videos where I showed different techniques for overwintering rooted cuttings. So we're not going to do any specific techniques in this video. This video, the purpose of it is to point you to those videos. So I'm going to have links in the description to all those videos. I think I've got like 5 or 6 or 7 videos about overwintering rooted cuttings, and you guys can go check all of those out. But I want to make some points here. A lot of this is going to depend on what zone you live in. But I want you to understand some principles of keeping and managing these rooted cuttings so that you can take those principles and adjust them for your zone or your climate patterns. So the first one is, you really should be growing plants that are cold hardy to your region. If you're trying to grow a rhododendron that's only cold hardy to -5 degrees, Fahrenheit, and you live in zone 4, it's not going to work. It just isn't going to work. You're going to want to bring that rhododendron in a pot into your home and keep it warm all winter long. It's just the way it's going to have to be. So you should be looking for plants that are hardy to your area. If you do, pay attention to and build your landscape stock in plants that are cold hardy to your area, you will have a way better time with this. You will have so much more fun because your cuttings will survive through the winter. Remember, as long as they're cold hardy to your area, these rooted cuttings are just almost 99% as hardy as the parent plant is, and they will survive freezing temperatures, and they'll do just fine and bounce back. If you've got plants that are on the edge of the cold hardiness for your area, then the cuttings may or may not do okay. It just depends on how the winter goes in your area. So make sure you choose plants that are right for your area. The cuttings should do just fine. Two, the most important thing to protect from is the drying winter winds. So a lot of people think, they go, I don't have a greenhouse like you, Mike, and so how am I going to be able to manage this? And I want you guys to know that this is not a greenhouse. It's actually called a hoop house or a cold frame. Both ends are open, and I've talked about this in previous videos, but both ends of this thing are wide open. I seal this up during the winter, but all of the plants in here, my rhododendrons, my big broadleafed evergreens, they freeze hard as a rock. And I've made videos and shown that on videos over the years here, just so you guys can see what they look like in the winter. But they freeze hard as a rock. These pots are hard, the leaves curl up and they just kind of point downward and they don't look happy at all. And every year, you know, it's nail biting and I get nervous about it, and every spring they bounce right back. What this cold frame does is it protects from the fast, hard, drying winter winds. So what you don't want to do is leave your cuttings exposed. They can freeze, that's fine, but put them on your back porch. Put them in a place, put them in a tote, put them in a plastic tote, but crack the lid sideways. You know, you get a little air circulation in there, but you won't have any hard winds just drying out those cuttings. You want to keep the cuttings moist through the winter. Not wet, but you want that soil to be moist. If it dries out, they're going to die. So you don't need a greenhouse. You don't even need a hoop house. You don't even need a cold frame like this. Like I said, put them in a tote, crack the lid, put them on your back porch, protect them from the wind. Another thing that can harm cuttings is the frost thaw cycle. So if you're in an area where you're right on the edge, and I'm kind of in an area like that, where you get a hard freeze and then it thaws, and then a hard freeze and then it thaws, and a hard freeze and it thaws, that can really wear out your cuttings. It can wear out any plants, and it can cause rot, cause root rot, can cause all kinds of problems because they're not, you know, they're staying dormant, but they're just getting that frost thaw cycle, and it'll just beat up the plants over the winter. So if you're in an area like that, you will, sometimes it can be better to protect them in an environment like this, but like I said, you can just use a plastic tote. Another thing that can be really hard on new young rooted cuttings is a hard fast freeze. And so as you're going into the fall, you want them to gradually become dormant and harden off over a month or so. But some years, I mean, it just depends on the weather and the year, but some years, all of a sudden, you know, you'll be in November and it's been a long warm November, and then boom, that temperature drops down to 25, and you know, you're like, what the heck? That can really harm your cuttings if they haven't had a chance to slowly harden off into that late fall, early winter time. So the best thing you can do is just lightly protect them. Keep them in an area where you're not going to get a lot of winds. A back porch with an awning is good because it'll protect from those frosts. Any covering, it could be any covering that just, you know, even if it's wide open on all the sides, but maybe protected on one side from wind, but you know, open on the other three sides, and you just got a piece of plywood sitting over top. That frost that comes down and just hits hard right off the bat, it will protect from that. Just, you know, you see trees, or not trees, but landscape plants like hydrangeas or hostas that are planted under big canopy trees. They're protected, even though it's just leaves up there. Even a lot of them have fallen off and you just got a lot of branches left. It protects a little bit from that fast frost. It gives them more time to acclimate. So I think that's enough to be said about that. I've made a lot of videos on this. I just wanted to alert your guys' attention to them because I'm getting tons of questions about this. I'll put links to all of them in the description below. I hope you guys learned something from this. Go check out those videos. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe if you want to follow along. Have a fantastic week, and I'll see you in the next video. Adios.